Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining this exciting panelist discussion on landing capital venture capital here in Eastern Kentucky in the Appalachian region. My name is Brooklyn, and I'm a project manager at the Kentucky Cabinet for Economic Development. My home is actually here in Morehead, so I've worked many projects throughout the state of Kentucky, but Eastern Kentucky is my home and a place that I like to say has mountains of potential. And our panel today talks about a game changer, not just for us here in Eastern Kentucky, but nationally. So joining us today, I have Bob Helton, the local economic developer in Rowan County. And joining us later will be Jonathan Webb, the CEO of AppHarvest. Now we have Matt Gosnell filling in for him. He's their Vice President of Development. So really excited to just take a deep dive in. We'll jump right in. I would ask that if you are not speaking, if you're just participating and watching, please mute your microphones and keep those muted. We will have about 15 minutes at the end of the session for Q&A from the audience. So feel free to be thinking of those questions and place those in the chat for us to see. And we will go over some of those hopefully towards the end of the session. Again, we'll have about 15 minutes. So while we're waiting on Jonathan to join us, I will go ahead and start with some questions for you, Bob, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So you've been one of AppHarvest's biggest cheerleader and supporters from day one. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how this project first got started, who contacted who, what was the recruitment process like, and maybe what were your initial thoughts as an economic developer when you found out that AppHarvest wanted to locate one of the world's largest high-tech greenhouses right here in Morehead, Kentucky?
Well, the first thing you do is pick yourself up off the floor when you hear something like that. But it's ironic that we're talking about this at a SOAR meeting when actually I became acquainted with Jonathan at a SOAR meeting a few years ago up in Pikeville, and we were talking about how there might be second and third facilities coming along, and so I just politely asked Jonathan that if on down the road that if he would consider Morehead, we would really appreciate that. So ironically, in a few weeks, I got a call from him, and he needed a site, so we went to work. We looked at several things here in Rowan County that were kind of so-so, but didn't work. And then we landed on the property just north of the industrial park. Hey, John. And on the property just north of the industrial park. And I'll never forget Jonathan's first reaction to seeing that site. See, Matt, he said, well, heck, we can build two. Initially, we were thinking about a 30-acre site, and one of Jonathan's first reactions was seeing that site and saying, well, heck, we can build here. And lo and behold, we did. So that was exciting. Some of the, luckily with that site, it was a really good site, a good location, fit the needs, and very luckily, the owner of that property, Mr. Canada, was a willing seller, and so we were able to get through the process of getting that property, and then that gave Jonathan a good site to sell his investment group then. So it was a very interesting kickstart to that whole process.
Great. And at what point during the project process was there a certain turning point where you absolutely knew that this thing was for sure a go, and in fact was going to turn out really larger than anyone had projected?
Well, I think, like I said, when we secured an option on the property, and Jonathan was in a position to go to investment groups and bringing in the Equilibrium folks on the funding side, and then other folks from Mastrodati and others that were really true experts in the field, that we could see, this thing was really taking hold. and getting equilibrium on site. So that really was a strong kickstart.
Great. And what that, or maybe it was a few things that AppHarvest needed from you most as the local economic developer? Was it support or being able to introduce them to the right people that could get them things that they needed? Was it just being a friend or providing advice?
Yes to all the above. There were many things that came along. One, first and foremost, finding the site and helping secure that site. But then going forward, just a whole cadre of things, getting acquainted with local officials, finding out about building permits, working with the cabinet on incentives and getting assistance from the cabinet to do things. And then we got into the whole piece of building permits, looking for, dealing with the Corps of Engineers and their permits and the waterways. And turned out we did one of the most interesting things that I think happened was we found we had to do an archaeological study on 120 acres. And if anyone's done an archaeological study, basically they overlay a grid 50 by 50 and want to dig holes every 50 feet. That was going to take months to get done, and we didn't have months. So we found a process that we could literally take a farm plow and plow furrows every 50 feet. And the inspectors for the archaeological study came in and walked those furrows, and we did all that over the weekend. That happened to be a Memorial Day weekend. So we were able to find a process of cutting an archaeological study from a couple of 3 months down to one weekend. So just one thing after another like that. We'd run into a roadblock and we would find a way to bust through that wall.
Great. So AppHarvest is just a part, although a very large part of a series of new investments in Morehead and in Rowan County. Can you share a little bit with us how all of these investments are generating buzz around the community and about the record employment opportunities that are going on for this county and this region?
Sure. It's been a really interesting couple of 3 years. The AppHarvest project was just phenomenal in size. Initially 83 million, and then quickly jumping over $100 million in investment, 300 employees. Just something to get hugely excited about in an industry that we knew nothing about, frankly, all brand new to us. Coincidentally, at the same time, we had the independent save cooperage going on across the road, with another 220 jobs that's under construction as well. So kind of the buzz around the county, the local officials, the county judge, fiscal court got a little excited about, in a region, not just Rowan County, but in our region, do we have enough employees to fill those jobs? And we're finding out, luckily, through the first round of hiring that's gone very well with AppHarvest. So, that's been a big buzz, people getting really excited about new opportunities, maybe even if they work outside Rowan County and drive to central Kentucky or wherever, that now we can get good, sustainable jobs and stay at home. So that's just a huge buzz here.
Great. And with these new investments, can you share a little bit about what's being done here in Morehead and Rowan County to prepare maybe for additional growth and additional investments in the future?
Sure, absolutely. And particularly talking about the workforce commitment and getting to a point that we were comfortable we could fill these jobs. About 5 years ago, our friends to the east had commissioned Del Boyette to do a workforce study. And just so happened they've recommissioned Del to do a 2.0 update of that study. So we locally have asked Del to, at the same time, do a deep dive into Rowan County and surrounding counties workforce, so that we have a better feel going forward what the workforce looks like here. Additionally, we're we're taking a lot of efforts to work on the broadband infrastructure and just be sure our other infrastructures are up to speed. And we've also commissioned through Brett Trevor down at SCID to update our website and do some branding and marketing work as well. So a whole lot of efforts going on, and buzz is a very good word because there's a lot of buzz here.
Great. Well, thank you, Bob. And as we transition over to asking some questions to Jonathan, I want you to keep in mind, we want to keep this as conversational as possible. So any questions that I ask Jonathan, feel free to add to those or chime in at any point. We want to keep this conversational. So Jonathan, thank you very much for being able to join us today. And starting out, since we have so many people from the region tuned in with us, I have to ask maybe one of the most expected or the most obvious questions, but why Eastern Kentucky? Why Appalachia for this wonderful opportunity?
You're muted, Jonathan.
I think you're muted. The most popular phrase used in 2020, right? You're on mute.
On mute. You're good.
There you go.
All right. There's 2 or 3 different buttons in here. Unfortunately, we're trying to socially distance, so we'd have somebody on the tech team in here with me, but it's just me. So I grew up in Kentucky. I spent a lot of time in Lexington growing up, and I went to the University of Kentucky. My grandmother grew up in Whitley County. I have a sister who married a gentleman from the Pike County area. And it's one of those things where anybody that grows up in the state certainly knows the importance of the coal industry. And, you know, for me personally, I was getting out of undergrad at the University of Kentucky right around the time of really the kind of the start of the decline of what's happened over the last 10 years in the coal industry. So I graduated from the University of Kentucky in 2007, and I built a career building some of the largest solar projects in the southeast of the U.S. and was doing that prior to AppHarvest. But seeing the decline of the coal industry was something I know that in the state was hard for a lot of people to watch. But I was out of the state. I moved out. I was in New York and D.C. for about 10 years before moving back to Kentucky. And it was just hard to watch. I mean, there were friends, family. I told you my grandmother in Whitley County. I don't talk about it too much, but you know, her and her sisters grew up without a father because their father died in a coal mining accident. And, you know, just to know how much people have sacrificed over decades to power this country in the coal industry. And then we as a country never said what's next. Never said, okay, well, if we do start to transition away from coal in some way, what are we going to do? And I was in D.C. at the time living, and it was right. I moved back to Kentucky after the last election, and it was just shocking to see that there was no real coordinated effort in the investment community, in the private sector, or even in DC. I mean, you got to think even up to 5 years ago, it was very contentious. Still, I mean, obviously is that, you know, you're either in this camp or you're in this camp. But forget about political interest and forget about camps. You know, what are we going to do in the region to attract investment? And, you know, so the concept of AppHarvest was we wanted to build some of the largest controlled environment ag facilities in the world. But we wanted to do it in an area of the country that has some of the hardest working men and women in the world, and that's east of Lexington, really. I mean, you look anywhere in eastern Kentucky, and you just find an incredible work ethic and a tenacity that's driven the coal industry for decades. So we're extremely fortunate to not only be building these facilities, but we're very fortunate to be doing it here in Kentucky, where we have, you know, just so many good attributes this state offers. So So we're well on our way at this point, but we've got a lot of work to do in the coming years.
Great, great. Would you mind telling us a little bit about getting started and how you got this project lifted off the ground? We'll discuss the continued investment and how the project just seemed to keep growing, but fill us in on what it was like trying to get the first significant portion of this investment secured.
It was, again, this question I don't get asked that much, but just so people on the call understand and realize, entrepreneurship looks wonderful on the internet. It's got, great photos and glossy and pretty. The reality of entrepreneurship, it's a dogfight. It's brutal. For me, I didn't have much, but I put everything I had into this company. When I moved from DC, a very, very small amount of capital. I mean, it was frankly under $100,000. I put everything I had in, and then I put 5 credit cards I maxed out. So before we got our first investment from Rise of the Rest in February 2018, that first year of this company, I maxed out my credit cards and put everything I personally had into it. So when people ask, what is entrepreneurship and what does it take? I was debating on whether or not I had to stay on people's couches because I wasn't sure I was going to be able to have a house. That's entrepreneurship. It is hard, brutal, and it is not for everybody. I don't recommend it for everybody. There's a reason why people want to work at a good company, because you need to be prepared to fail if you're going to be an entrepreneur. I failed for 10 straight years on trying to build a company. I've wanted to have a company since the moment I started. I got out of school. It didn't work that way. And when I started AppHarvest, I went all in, every chip on the table. And the way I viewed it was, worst case scenario, I'm going to get delayed a couple of years and I have to stay at a friend's house. But no one is going to stop me but myself. And that is an entrepreneur. When you're willing to put everything you have on the line for what you believe in, one, you better make sure you got a hell of a business plan, because if you're really going to go all in on that business plan, you better make sure it's a winner. But I knew we had a winner, and scale was our biggest advantage, but biggest hurdle. I come from a humble background. My parents had high school degrees. So to go say that we're going to raise $100 million for a facility was psychotic. It was delusional. I mean, here I am with a couple, I put $100,000 in myself, and I'm going to go raise $100 million to build our first facility. But we had to build big. If we did not build 2.8 million square feet in Morehead, we wouldn't be able to compete with Mexico. It was about economies of scale. But what I would say to people listening and anybody else starting a company in this state, ask people for help. Find people who are willing to help you and support you. It's not just dollars. Our early investors, I tracked down Steve Case and JD like I was a stalker almost. I mean, I would sneak on elevators to get into office buildings. I would run down hallways to try to find people. That's what it takes in entrepreneurship. No one is going to roll out the red carpet for you and walk you into an office. It's not going to happen. You've got to hustle your way into the office. You've got to believe in that idea more than anybody around you. When your family doesn't believe in you, when your friends, they might believe in you, but they might also try to talk you off the ledge a little, your friends, and go, you know what? Why don't you slow down? Why don't you take a step back? Why don't you go a little smaller? That's when okay, take the feedback, see if it's real, see what the problems are and how you can tighten up. But entrepreneurship is brutal. It's a dogfight. It might look pretty on Instagram and on Facebook, but the realities of what it takes to build a business, the first 2 to 3, 4 years of any company, it's hard. It's hard work. You talk to anybody. Nothing about it is easy. But you've got to find, and that's what's so good about this region, and that's what's so good about SOAR, is there are people that want to help you succeed. They want to help you succeed. Find universities here, find community colleges, find mayors, find people that want to latch onto your idea and help you succeed and build that coalition. But don't kid yourself that there's nothing easy about entrepreneurship. And the entrepreneurs who are big and bold in our region, we need to support them. We need to create safety nets. Not everybody is going to succeed. There's going to be a lot of failures in entrepreneurships. When you take risks, and you take a lot of risks, we can't expect a 100% success rate. I mean, if we're batting 50%, that is a huge win. So how are we helpful with those entrepreneurs in this state that are willing to take a risk, that are putting their life into it, everything they have into it? And I think SOAR and other organizations need to think through, how are we supporting the entrepreneurs to empower them to charge forward, knowing not every one of these entrepreneurs is going to be successful. But again, what I would say is as an entrepreneur, you're not judged about how many times you get knocked to the mat. You're going to be judged on how many times you get back up, and at the end, did you win the fight? And you're going to get knocked to the mat. It's going to happen, and you're going to think you're down and out. I can tell you, when we met with Bob, look, it was brutal. There was tears. I mean, we put so much into trying to build in Pikeville. It was emotional. It was very emotional. Still is, thinking about it. Not being able to build there was the hardest decision we've ever made. But damn it, we had to find a site. We had to go. We had to find somewhere we could build. And again, that's what entrepreneurship it is. We should have been down and out. Our investors were going to walk from us. We were down. And we collected ourselves calmly and tried to look at what did we need to build the first project. And thank God we found Bob Helton, and we found a site. We were able to put together a $100 million project that should take 5 years of planning, frankly. I mean, at least 2 or 3. And Bob would put the damn project together in 3 or 4 months. Put it together in 3 or 4 months. And that's where, when people tell you you're going too fast or you're thinking too big, just tell them there's a door and ask them to leave. I mean, don't take excuses. If you're putting everything you have into something, then the people that are going to try to slow you down, just get them out of your life. There's no place for it. So, you know, what we did in Morehead, I was talking to Harvard 2 weeks ago, where Harvard Business School might be doing a case study on what we've done here. To put a $120 million project together in less than 4 months, it's just unheard of. And again, it's a testament to this region. It's a testament to people not taking no for an answer and trying to get to a solution. You're going to have problems. You're going to have challenges. Just try to get to a yes and figure out how you get to a solution.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Jonathan. I want to talk a little bit more about the investment in the Morehead project, because I think it started out as maybe an 80 or 83 million total capital investment. I think it's grown now to be $100,000 or more. How did this happen? It seems like people just kept investing and the project kept growing.
We put the latest and greatest technologies.
Brooklyn, can you hear me?
Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, Bob, you're on. So we put the latest and greatest technologies in the facility, Brooklyn. It was something where we ended up spending a little bit more with the LED lights. This will be one of the largest LED lighting installations in the world. We elected to go with the LED lights after we made the announcement. So the project came in over $100 million, and that again was a commitment to build not just a large facility, but build a world-class state-of-the-art facility that would be top of the line. And so we will, as a result, you know, we're going to save that money over time, where we're using, you know, less inputs, less electricity. We're running the facility completely on recycled rainwater. So we upped the investment to put more technology in it, and we're going to recoup that investment over the life of the facility.
Great. So shifting gears here just a little bit, we know that agriculture maybe hasn't necessarily always been a hotbed for attracting capital. However, we know that recent trends such as this have shown that to be changing. why do you think this trend is occurring, and why the sudden interest in having an investment in high-tech agriculture?
So again, I went to public schools here in Kentucky, went to the University of Kentucky. I did not have these conversations growing up at all. All this is new to me in the last year or two. Some of the most shocking statistics I've found. Why are we seeing the rapid pace of investment into agriculture? The UN's predicted we need 50 to 70% more food by 2050. So in less than 30 years. And the way we currently grow food, you would need 2 planet Earths to have enough land and water. If you look between now and 2050, humans are going to need to produce more food than we have in the last 8,000 years of human existence. So if you take the last 8,000 years of food that's been produced, we're going to produce more of that as a world over the next 30 years. It is staggering what we need to do. And the reality is we have a finite planet. There's only so much land, there's only so much water. You know, people talk about coal and how the coal seams used to be 6 feet or 7 feet, and now the seams are down to a foot or 2. Well, what we don't talk about is the soil health. And we're taking all the nutrient out of our soil. The UN's also said that within 60 years, our topsoils are no longer going to be fertile to a point to where we can grow productive food. So we're sucking the nutrients out of our soils. We have unprecedented rates of demand on how much more food the world needs. So some of the most sophisticated investors in the world are seeing, you know, look at companies like AppHarvest. We're not going to be perfect. We're going to get hit down. We're going to have a lot of challenges. But the problem is so big that we at AppHarvest have to succeed. We have no other choice but then to be successful. And our investors have really doubled down. We announced about a month ago that we'll be going public on the NASDAQ and raising nearly $500 million, which is staggering to me to even think about. But we're just getting started. You know, we need to be building, you know, 3, 4, 5 facilities a year if we're really going to retool the supply of the food chain here in the U.S. Bob, any thoughts on that?
Agree with you, absolutely. You know, we've really got to get busy on this, and I think it's amazing that the investors have bought in, and the job you've done attracting these investors and getting their attention. So, you know, I think it's great for East Kentucky that we can start to build these things up and just keep building in that direction.
I saw how many greenhouses are projected. So we just announced we're building our first 3 facilities. We want to be near universities. So we're building near Morehead State University. We're building near Eastern Kentucky University and Berea College. And we're hoping to dig into Southeast Kentucky from there. Our second facility was announced will be near EKU's farm. Our third facility was announced will be near Berea College. We just put in our SEC filing that we plan to build a little over 10 facilities in the next 5 years. I can tell you that we're working hard to hopefully beat that projection. And the market demand is there. As much as we can build and grow, we're going to have shelf space at the largest grocers, largest retailers, and largest fast food chains.
Jonathan, you touched a little bit with your last response on a question that I have. So I believe it was last month an announcement was made that AppHarvest had entered into agreement with a publicly traded special purpose acquisition company, Novus Capital. How long had this been a topic of discussion, and how does becoming a publicly traded company really change the game for the future of AppHarvest?
So it's all about transparency in agriculture. We want to be transparent. You know, you look at the fruit and vegetable production coming out of Mexico. I was with Secretary Perdue earlier this year before COVID. Produce imports from Mexico to the U.S. have nearly tripled. So when people say, who's your competition, please make it very clear. Farmers in the U.S. and farmers in Kentucky are not our competition. The produce coming out of Mexico, that's our competition. And why did we go public? because we want the buyer of our fruit and vegetable to also have the opportunity to invest in our company. And it could be $20. It doesn't need to be big investments, but we want the public to engage, be our advocate, go to DC, advocate on behalf of this industry. The reality of what we've done is we've outsourced our illegal activity down to Mexico. It's unacceptable. They're paying people $5 a day to work on farms, 12-hour days with no paid time off. That's our competition. They're using illegal chemical pesticides 3 to 4 times a week that you can use once a year in the US. It is absolutely unacceptable. And the only way to change agriculture is to engage the public, ignite this conversation with the public. And we really, the only way to do that is to be a publicly traded company. We want to offer transparency in agriculture that really doesn't exist at a large scale right now. And we want the scrutiny of a publicly traded company. We want the hard questions so that we can get better over time. But the reality of what we're fighting against with the imports coming out of Mexico, it's atrocious. We got to raise the standard in agriculture. We need government, we need policymakers in DC leading. We need consumers demanding better products, and we need CEOs of the largest grocers, making sure that we set standards that are not only free trade, but fair trade, to where we can all be proud of the fruit and vegetable we put on our table. And that's what we're working hard at AppHarvest to do. That, if you go buy a tomato later this year or early next year, we want people to, one, not pay higher. So we can't make people pay higher for it. The average consumer cannot afford to pay more for fruit and vegetables at the grocer. We're committed to not raising prices, but we need people to feel proud of what they put on the table and know that it doesn't have the dirty chemicals, and that we're paying a fair wage with full health care, and that people can actually feel good about what they're putting on the table. So going public, it's put a lot of pressure on our team, a lot of pressure on the company, but ultimately we think it's the right thing to do to try to move the industry forward.
Great. I know we have some more questions coming in. I want to get to one more, and then for those of you that are tuned in with us, if you want to go ahead and start sending in some more of your questions, we'll get to those momentarily. But there is an elephant in the room here that we haven't really mentioned yet, which is the pandemic. It's the inevitable conversation that everyone's having and can't be avoided. Is there any advice? I mean, you all have secured this investment. The things you're doing are just simply incredible right in the middle of a pandemic. Is there any advice that you could give to startup companies in Appalachia, or really any company for that matter, on how to continue to weather the storm during these challenging times?
Well, I mean, be vigilant, be healthy, make sure health and safety are the #1 priority. And that's what we've tried to do. And beyond that, build resiliency into your business model. The reason we were able to attract all this money in the middle of COVID is because our business model was built around the fact that we need more resilient systems globally. We need more resilient systems here in the US. So unfortunately, COVID was not a surprise to many of our early investors. These once in a lifetime moments are going to happen every 5 to 10 years in our life if we do not wake up and build more resilient systems. So, coming out of COVID, we all need to be thoughtful on what are we doing to participate in trying to make this a stronger economy here in the US. And it's something that again, it's going to take a decade or two for us to all figure out, but it's something we have to do. I saw Jason's question about how do we get more high-tech companies into Eastern Kentucky. It's by conversations like this and doing the hard work, and Jason's been out there and others. It's, look, we're not going to land everybody, but we got to pick up the phone and make the calls. I saw where Hyperloop is going to be going to West Virginia. I mean, that's a big win for the region. I mean, Hyperloop's going to be putting their testing facility in West Virginia. Yeah, we'd love to see it in Eastern Kentucky, but let's not kid ourselves. That's a huge win for the region. And we need to be putting a team together that's putting sales calls and pitching all these Silicon Valley companies to come open up shop. I mean, California's on fire. San Francisco rents are through the roof. It's unmanageable to try to live in San Francisco. People in New York, if you got a family, you can't live in New York City right now. our region should be dialing the phones of every company trying to sell why Eastern Kentucky, and trying to get these companies to relocate to this region. I mean, we have a great story to tell. We just need to be out there aggressively telling the story. We're not going to get everybody to come, but we only need a couple big names to show up, and this story changes overnight.
Big amen to that.
We also we also have another question. Someone would love to hear about any incorporation of blockchain technology in your supply chain operation.
We're definitely monitoring blockchain. Yes, I would love, big picture, the idea would be you would be able to scan your box of vegetables or fruit and vegetable at the grocery store, and that QR code would be able to tell you exactly who picked it and where it was picked. We want to provide that full transparency. Blockchain in agriculture will forever change the industry. I mean, if people had full visibility into what you were eating, you would not be putting it on your table. I eat mainly plants. And to think, if I go to a grocery and pick up a tomato, I could find 10 or 12 different chemicals on that tomato. It's ridiculous. And the only way we're gonna change agriculture is transparency, and the way to do that is technology like blockchain. So, you know, we're monitoring blockchain. I'd love to have, we're trying to figure it out how we implement it into our business. And we know consumers are craving transparency. Blockchain provides that.
Is AppHarvest open to partnering with others who are working to promote the region for the better?
Try to work through SOAR. Let's figure out how we can tell our stories together and continue to elevate all these positive stories that are happening in the region. History's on our side. It's going to look totally different in 10 years. We're going to do it. Bob, you know, I know you've been committed with us since day one. AppHarvest will be a strong champion, but we're going to get some other good companies here, and it's going to take a little while to make it happen. But we got to continue to tell the story of what this region has to offer.
Great. And I know, you know, for the end customer, one of the biggest advantages of having a high-tech greenhouse here in the United States, specifically here in Kentucky, where we're so well logistically located, why is it such a big advantage to cut down on the transportation from, say, maybe Mexico to the end customer? What are the advantages of that other than the obvious transportation costs?
Yeah, 40% of fresh fruit and vegetables in the U.S. end up in a landfill. It's ridiculous. I mean, we are transporting fruit and vegetables 2,000 and 3,000 miles from Mexico and California to major markets on the East Coast. It is ludicrous. So, you know, we got to get that spoilage number in the U.S. down. I eat, again, mainly fruits and vegetable plants, and I don't want to eat a tomato that's coming out of Mexico. They're picking it, it's green. The seeds are bred for transportation. So they're genetically modifying the seeds, not for taste, not for flavor, not for nutrient density, but to be able to sit on a truck for 2 weeks. As a result, the fruit and vegetables taste terrible. I mean, it's a terrible product. You know, when people ask me, you know, what are the best tomatoes? It's something you can grow in your backyard, whatever your grandmother grows. That's the best tasting tomato you're going to get. That's what a real tomato should taste like. The stuff coming 2 weeks on a truck from Mexico, it tastes terrible, and we're putting about half of it in a landfill. It's got to change. The only way to change that is to bring production closer to where it's consumed.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to loving grandmother's locally grown tomato right out of the backyard. I know I enjoy during the summertime just going out, grabbing one off the vine and eating it like an apple. So I'm really excited to try these tomatoes grown right here in Morehead. I can't wait for that.
Make sure to get everybody on this call some tomatoes in January. When you can eat a tomato like an apple in January, just like it's a good late summer day, that you'll know what we're talking about then. Juicy, plump, ripe, the same day you pick it, it's going to be on store shelves, good nutrient density. Bob, I look forward to making sure we get all these tomatoes out to everybody on the call.
Absolutely. That's going to be very exciting.
We're gonna hold you to that. I think we did miss a question from earlier. I'm trying to scroll back and see. Are you going to sell your prototype to other countries?
We're the largest the U.S. is the largest economy in the world. We're the largest agriculture economy in the world. When we lead agriculture forward here in the U.S., we're absolutely going to have international doors knocking. The UN Security Council was here for the first time in our state history. U.S. Ambassador Kelly Craft brought them to the governor's mansion. I think it was back in December. I was with the Chinese ambassador. And the fact here I am sitting as a guy who grew up in Kentucky, building facilities here, talking to the Chinese ambassador about how do we build these in China was just, it's shocking to me, but it's also humbling to realize that, Bob, we take for granted that we're doing this in the U.S. And then when we get this right in the U.S., it's not going to be, do we go to other countries? It's what country we go to, because there's a lot of countries that have real problems in their agriculture system. And I definitely think there's going to be an opportunity. We don't have it in our plan. It's not in our projections. We got to get it right here in the next 2 to 3 years. But Kentucky is definitely going to be a world leader in agriculture. And I'm sure we're going to have a lot of opportunity to go out on the global stage after we get it right here.
We just had another interesting question come through. What is the best way to invest or provide support to AppHarvest?
Well, the best way to provide support is just to elevate the conversation in agriculture. I mean, the stuff we're talking about here should be mainstream. I mean, we need people on everyday news networks talking about it. And the only way to do that is for people to make this important in their daily life. I mean, have the conversation at your grocer. I mean, talk to your managers at the grocery store, or let them elevate it from there. As far as investing, we're doing a merger with a company that's publicly traded on the NASDAQ. Our ticker will be over on the AppHarvest ticker later this year on the NASDAQ, and we'll be releasing a lot of public information on how to directly buy the AppHarvest stock later this year. But as far as support, it's really just having this conversation in the communities across the state, and let our political leadership know that we want our state to lead on agriculture. We need federal advocates in DC who are going to be working to work on behalf of U.S. American farmers. And here's the thing we find: yes, they like to hear our voice, but more than anything, they like to hear their constituents. So let's make our state loud and proud that we're going to lead agriculture forward. Do it on social media, do it in conversations at grocery stores, and let's make sure we elevate the conversation.
Another question that we had come in, how will the new USMCA with Mexico and Canada affect your business and your business model?
We're not monitoring it too much. The reality is we're focused on growing a good product, and we're going to be on store shelves as much as we can build and grow. But we do need to take a step back as a country. we're all for free trade, but it has got to be fair trade. And what we did to our U.S. farmers was unacceptable. We outsourced our illegal activity down to Mexico, and we allowed products on the store shelves that you would not be able to get by with what they're doing down there. So we need fair labor practices where everybody makes a living wage on farms. We need to get the harsh chemical pesticides off the farms. And if U.S. farmers are forced to live up to a standard, we sure as heck need to make sure our international import partners are doing it. And again, that's where it takes political leadership. I mean, we're just a company. We're trying to build and operate. We can't write and change laws, but we need the public to be very active with our lawmakers. The trade deals that are in place, it has definitely hurt American farmers, and we as a company are not going to be able to solve that. But I'm confident in the years ahead, no matter who's in DC, we need to think about fair trade. Make the trade fair for every party, to where there's standards that if you're going to sell a product in the U.S., that you need to live up to this standard. And unfortunately, and protect the American consumer. I mean, protect the American consumer. A mom and dad should be able to go to bed at night knowing that if they buy a product and they put it on their table, that product's not going to be laden with chemicals. And unfortunately, you don't have that protection right now.
Along that line, Jonathan,
Right.
Pepe's story just hugely heart touching to me when you hear Pepe talk about went through and had on health. So those exact conversations in my mind are paramount to get out for people to understand.
So Jonathan, back to what you were saying, you plan on marketing and these tomatoes will be organic that you'll be growing, is that correct?
What is that? No, we can get
The
organic
tomato
certification. We're not going to go after. We're going to sell under conventional. Our target is the 90% of the dirty conventional product coming out of Mexico. So it's a very focused targeting on that. I saw Chris Dent just posted a question. What other industries are a good fit? Aerospace. I know Rocky talks about it all the time. Our state talks about it. I mean, we have a lot of industries we're going to attract here, right? The Tesla truck. I can tell, I mean, I know Kimball Musk, there's no reason our state wasn't lobbying like hell to get the Tesla truck manufactured here instead of in Texas. I mean, this needs to be all hands on deck. I mean, our state is well positioned for a lot of industries, but we got to be out hustling on behalf of our state to bring those industries here. So when you say Brooklyn, I'd love to hear what you think, but our state is well suited for a heck of a lot more than just agriculture.
Oh, absolutely. And with the aerospace side, fortunately, we had Bob Skinner with Radiant that got a tour of the greenhouse this morning, and he was seeing some of the things over there on how Radiant and their high-tech communication devices might work with the greenhouse, and that kind of collaboration, I think, is just ultimately important to us in the future.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Bob. Like Jonathan said, aerospace, Kentucky being the #1 exporter of aerospace products in the U.S. I work a lot of automotive projects. That's actually kind of what I specialize in as a project manager. So while we face are still facing some uncertain times in the automotive industry, we know that the electric vehicle industry is certainly trending. Heavy investments are being made in EV parts, in the EV sector in certain parts of the U.S., specifically the southeastern United States. We also know that food and beverage, particularly throughout this pandemic, that's certainly ramped up, and particularly on the e-commerce side. We're seeing a lot of people able to order their food online, have it delivered to their door. And as these pandemic continues to keep ramping up in numbers, we're not going to see a slowdown in that anytime soon. So we have some very major Fortune 500 companies making significant investments here in the southeastern part of the United States in the food and beverage industry as well.
Yeah, as part of the e-commerce.
I have to jump, but you all are in good hands with Bob here. He's been a strong champion in the state, a great resource that I think anybody that's questioning how do we get companies to come here, Bob is the perfect person to talk to. Thank you for letting us share our story, and I look forward to continuing to work with SOAR, as it's been a critical organization for AppHarvest and a lot of other companies here in the region.
Thank you, Jonathan. We really appreciate your time today.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. See you soon. You mentioned the e-commerce. I think that's something that we in Kentucky need to keep on that drum as well, and that goes back to the logistics that we talked about earlier, being able to reach 3/4 of the U.S. population in one day's truck drive. In Morehead, we've got Family Dollar distribution, just all over the state's distribution. So I think we continue to blow that up, and as e-commerce keeps coming stronger and stronger, we're going to see that continue to grow as well.
That's right. I think it's still very early, and there are still a lot of unknowns as to what industry is going to kind of take the lead here. And but we know that Kentucky is well poised regardless, very well logistically located, as probably everyone here joining us realizes. And that's really something that's natural that puts us a bit ahead of the game versus some other parts of the United States. Bob, do you have anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up here?
Well, I think just to add, with Jonathan kind of out of the room now, so to speak, I think folks can continue to see the enthusiasm that he has and the dedication that Jonathan's built for this. And there were a lot of doubters early on, and we worked through that. And once the funding became solid and we got the Dutch involved with their technology, it just, the timing was perfect. The stars and the moon kind of lined up for this industry to kickstart. So I think even though it was a big question mark early on, there shouldn't be a doubt in anybody's mind that this industry is real. It's going to be huge in Kentucky. If we've been looking for a coal industry replacement, I think this is hitting the mark very well.
I agree. And thank you, Bob. We owe a big thanks to you. I personally know the cheerleader and the supporter that you've been for this company since day one. And they couldn't have done it without you. So thank you for everything that you've done and that you'll continue to do.
We appreciate that. It's been an exciting ride for sure. Thanks for your help early on as well.
Absolutely. And I think if folks are interested in, future employment or job openings or hiring schedules, things like that, you can visit AppHarvest's website under careers. I was supposed to plug that for them. So we encourage you to check out their website, and feel free to email us with any additional questions you may have. I know the AppHarvest team is happy to answer those at some point. So thank you everybody for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And everybody stay safe out there and have a good rest of the SOAR Summit 2020.